In today's episode, updates, unacceptable, electricity and internet cause and effect, why I have trust issues, HDMI, the time we lost a client because they used a printer as their router. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Updates, unacceptable. During my time at an MSP supporting many different medical offices, I've had my fair share of phone calls with practice admins and the docs themselves. There was one doctor I was on a first-name basis with, because I helped him figure out what was wrong with a piece of medical information software they were using. He wasn't a techy, but he understood the basics because he took the time to listen to me and ask good questions. Whenever he would call in, it would literally make my day. Unfortunately, not all doctors are like that. There was one office in particular who I was pretty familiar with, so much so that the practice admin, PA, was emailing me before she emailed our help desk to ask if a certain problem was handled by us. Every time I told her to email our help desk first, it would end in "but you're the best. You know us so well" responses. Anyway, one day she called in about one of the doctor's computers being crazy slow. I asked if I could remote into it, and sure enough, the computer was a snail. It would take a full 30 seconds to register a mouse click, really bad. Obviously the doctor was furious, saying how we just did a refresh of his desktop, which we did, and now it's broken, it wasn't, and all that good stuff about how IT never does the job right. During this refresh we suggested that the computer have an SSD installed instead of an HDD, but since it was more expensive the doctor insisted on the HDD. It's cheaper and had more storage. Despite the fact that he only ever used 30% of the space on it. But no, he knows what he wants. We're just the desk jocks who have literally dedicated our lives to this field, so we can't possibly know more than him. So I opened up Task Manager and saw that the hard drive was running at 100% and wasn't slowing down. Boom. There's the problem. Except of course that I had no idea what was causing it. I emailed our dedicated field engineer about it, and he suggested that it might be downloading a major Windows update, one of the big feature updates that have a new Windows version number and all that, and it made sense because Microsoft had just released a major update to Windows in the past week. So I got back on the phone with the PA, and let her know to just leave the computer plugged in, and it will eventually speed up again after the download. Also, as a side note, we are constantly asking our clients to run Windows updates at the end of the day, so that the computers do their thing overnight, and when they come in the next morning they just have to restart, and we won't have to deal with a landslide of problems. But of course, that's too much work, and when it all inevitably breaks, all fingers point to IT. After a few minutes I heard the doctor in the background screaming again about how it still isn't fixed, and the PA asked if I could explain to him what I had just told her. So I did. Of course he wants to know how long it will take, and I regrettably had to tell him maybe an hour from start to finish. It's a big update. He wasn't a happy camper. But instead of yelling at me, he turns on the poor PA, shouting about how this is her fault because you're supposed to run the office smoothly, that includes my computer. After a long-winded minute he left again to go see patients. I couldn't do anything but apologize to the PA and insist that it wasn't her fault. A few weeks later, a call from the same office. This time it's the doctor on the phone. He's complaining about how his internet is slow. I hop on his computer again and my connection is a little choppy, so I check his computer's uptime and sure enough it's been on for a full 2 weeks. I suggested that he should restart his computer to, install the updates that downloaded 2 weeks ago. Apparently that was too complicated for him, and I had to guide him on how to restart from Windows instead of pulling the cable out of the back of the router. So not only did this doctor cut power to his computer whenever he wanted to turn it off, but in his own mind he thought he knew enough about them to start gunslinging jargon at me. Needless to say, I ended the call soon after this, and subtly suggested to have the PA call me if there's any further issues, so that I don't take up your precious time. Electricity and internet cause and effect. Long-time lurker, few-time commenter, first-time poster. I have withheld some stories so long that I'm afraid must start posting them before I forget them. Also, regular mobile user warning. This tale is more about embedded IoT system rather than PCs. This story came from relative who works as freelance electrical engineer. Tale happened about month or two ago, but details are bit fuzzy. Few years ago he worked with a small power grid maintenance company to help them upgrade some control system you'd find in electrical substation. I don't know what that system did, but one feature added by upgrade was to enable easier remote control and monitoring by adding internet connectivity via 4G modem. Fast forward to January when he got rather distressed call from owner of maintenance company. Turned out all upgraded substations had gone offline, apparently causing blackout affecting hundreds of people, and company's sole employee, owner, was on vacation at other side of country. I said it was small company. He needed relative to go and assist grid company with fixing the substations because he was one who set up those controllers. Turned out end users weren't experiencing any issues at all, most of substation systems worked fine as well. Only exception was the IoT module, which refused to connect to the server. Quick investigation showed that modem SIMs had hit data cap, refusing to connect internet. Issue happened simultaneously with multiple cards, because they were all managed under same package and contributed to same limit. Root cause of the problem was misuse of one of those SIM cards, which had ended up in owner's laptop's modem. Remember how he was on vacation in remote place? Well, he had habit of keeping eye on home's IP cameras while away, but laptop on which he watched them was using SIM card linked to IoT plan, eating up all data plan. P.S. Bit context of company relations for clarification: electricity distribution network, grid, belongs to state-owned monopoly, which subcontracts infrastructure construction and maintenance to smaller firms. This particular maintenance company had just one full-time employee, but due to size of the upgrade project needed additional support. Why I have trust issues. The first time I ever learned not to trust a user. I'd been trying to configure their VPN on the machine that I knew for a fact was their home machine. I know this because it's called home machine, and is a desktop that never moves and has never moved, because as I implied this was their home machine. It also helps that I have intermittently supported this machine over the years. So I get on there, set it up to connect to their work network, trying to connect, won't work for shit. I spend over an hour getting increasingly frustrated, which obviously clouds the mind. Getting this far is admittedly somewhat my fault for assuming anything I'd been told was true, which lead to me not checking/paying attention to certain things. I call the user up: hey, was there anything going on with your internet at yours? I just can't get it to work for some reason, thought maybe you know something I don't. Oh, it's the machine, here with me, I brought it in for you to set the VPN up. Excuse me, you've done what? And it's more of a statement than a question. We're 4 miles away from their offices, but I'm surprised they couldn't hear me shouting. HDMI? On mobile, so please bear with me. My company has a virtual range. We are upgrading to a slightly more robust system. For those unaware how a virtual range works, is you either have a laser pistol, or a cartridge that loads in a regular pistol that when the trigger is pulled it just pulses a laser. They make them in both red lasers and infrared lasers. A special camera tracks where the laser lands. Our current system just used regular paper targets. So it only needed the camera, the computer, and some form of pistol. The newer system displays moving targets, sudden targets, and a few other scenarios to make it a little bit more engaging and to test other skills. In order to do this, it needs a projector. Today one of our instructors brought over the projector she uses in class to test the system before our projector arrives next week. She had someone vent to her that it is too outdated to hook up to anything. Basically it just has VGA ports. The computer we are hooking up to is a Dell Inspiron all-in-one with a single HDMI port and several USB ports. There is no VGA on this thing. No problem, we get a VGA to HDMI adapter at the Walmart around the corner. But for some reason it refuses to recognize this. End up hooking the projector up to a different computer HDMI, just to make sure it works, and sure enough there's a connection. Next step is trying to hook the computer up to a TV we have there that we are going to display our training material on. Using a direct HDMI cord that we know works, not able to transmit anything to the TV. Spent another few hours trying to troubleshoot this, to eventually find the information that the HDMI is input only. Tomorrow I pick up the VGA to USB display adapter. I probably also need an HDMI to USB, because the TV was meant to be hooked up to that same computer. I have some choice words for Dell right now. The time we lost a client because they used a printer as their router. I still have no idea how this worked, because according to our scope we were not to touch the network because other companies have messed up our network in the past. It was a retail shop and we were retrofitting it to work with a new POS vendor. They had all their own equipment, but we just needed to wipe the machines, load the software, configure RMM for the devices, and ensure everything worked. When I got on site, everything seemed pretty simple besides a mess of unmanaged switches. All the computers were on DHCP and everything was wired. After I set everything up, I realized the printers were on a different network. Didn't seem like a big deal, just made sure the PCs had connections to both networks. Scanned the network to see the IP address of the printers, and that's strange, there's no gateway for the receipt printers network. After a few more tests, the printers are statically assigned to a non-existent network. I asked the owner if I could at least get the printers on the same network, denied. Okay then. Lo and behold, every time X amount of time the printers switched IPs, the whole shop went down. No insight into the network, so we had to just fix it every time, and eventually the customers dropped us for the guy who set up the network.